Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Shields and Arrows, where we defend the faith, the family, and the fellowship. I am Pastor Mark Baze. And this week, things are going to be a little bit sporadic. Sometimes we'll be going live maybe at our normal time. Expect that like on Wednesdays, at least as of right now. Possibly tomorrow, yet to be seen. We might go live at our normal time for Theology Thursday. Friday will probably be in the mornings. So what I'm going to ask of you is to endure with me on the randomness of the schedule. It's not what I wanted, but I really am doing it out of necessity. I believe that I need to continue to do this show. I do think this matters. The time to discuss theology, the time to address important matters, world events, because quite honestly, I feel like a lot of preachers aren't doing it. And it's very infuriating to me that they don't seem to have the courage or the moral clarity to address these matters. So if they're not going to do it, I am. At the same time, I have an obligation as a father to protect my children, and so I will be doing as much work at the school as I can to do security for the kids. And so my times are going to be random, all right? I just don't know when I'm going to be available, when I'm going to be here. So rest assured, I'm going to do the work of the ministry. Nothing has changed. We're going live tonight with Finding Abraham, Finding the Biblical Truth. I've been prepping for this study. So don't worry, the ministry work is going on. As a matter of fact, to some degree, it's even giving me more time to prep, okay? Just kind of how some of this has worked out. So I just ask you to please be patient with me as we're trying to navigate all this, doing what we must do, all right? Now, great to see everybody jumping on this morning. Really appreciate all of your support and encouragement. As far as the current events surrounding obviously Charlie Kirk and still all of the reactions, the responses, the trial that's going to be carried out. We're waiting to see how all this is going to completely come to fruition. It certainly seems like the mounting evidence would indicate that this murderer did not act alone. At least there were people who knew of it beforehand. This really does point to there being a broader conspiracy. So, to those who are not convinced that the whole story has been given, and maybe you're inclined to say, well, there was a government agency involved, there was another nation involved. I think there's a kernel of truth to a number of different perspectives, because the collective knowledge of the whole really does help shed some light. So I think there is more to the story. I think that there were more people who knew about what was going to happen. And at the same time, it can still be true that Tyler Robinson is the sick, wicked murderer that he is. So all these things can be true at once. So we're going to continue to wait and see how all of this plays out. So it's been a week since Charlie's been assassinated. The responses from people have been, on one side, let's be very positive, because I know that the news likes to focus on the negative, and there's a reason why it's so popular to cover the negativity, because it gets more clicks, it gets more views. But we have to reflect on the positives. The number of people who have tried to, or who are making the effort to start a new chapter for Turning Point, right? Different college campuses, high schools, you name it. There's been a massive inflow of applications, of the steps being made to start a Turning Point chapter at a number of new locations. That's excellent. Also, the donations that have come into Turning Point, as well as those that have donated to the Kirk family to help Erica Kirk. Now she needs to raise these children on her own because a vile, evil person robbed those children of their daddy and a wife of her husband. So there's been so many positive things. People coming out, praying for Charlie Kirk, big name people from a number of different places, some cases surprising. And so there's been a lot of positivity there. And we commend people in that. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of negative things. There's been people saying horrible, terrible things. It's exposed a lot of things, all right? It's exposed the mentality of some of these very left-wing people, and their true colors have shown in their celebration, even, of Charlie Kirk. I think it's going to lead to more exposure as time goes on. We're going to see that there's even more people who, you know what, at the end of the day, they really aren't all that sad that Charlie Kirk was murdered, and they are going to let the facade slip. They're going to let the mask slip, and you'll be able to see their real feelings about the matter. This is already happening. This Sunday that is coming up, if you watched last night's episode, we went live last night at 9 o'clock. And we talked about how this Sunday exposed a lot of preachers to not be fighters, exposed them to be cowards because they did not acknowledge what had taken place. And I encourage you to go back and watch that episode to get the full context and my explanation there. So I say that this next Sunday is going to be all the more revealing because now you have a second chance, all right? If you as a preacher, as a pastor, as a church, you have not proven yourself to be willing to offend some people for the sake of the truth, you messed up already by not acknowledging Charlie Kirk this previous Sunday. This next Sunday is your chance, okay? Once again, not to retread everything we talked about last episode, I simply mentioned that there are some preachers who do not have to prove their boldness and willingness to offend people for the sake of biblical truth, all right? We know that they are outraged. We know that they support Charlie, okay? So I don't need them to prove themselves, but there are some people who have been going to churches and they have never heard their pastors take a stance that in any way would upset those that would be, left of Bernie Sanders, right? So they, actually no, the analogy would work better if it's more centrist, right? Left of, say anything to offend anybody left of, what was that guy who ran for president? Mitt Romney. There you go, Mitt Romney. So very worried about offending anybody in any way. This Sunday is their chance. You get the opportunity to right the wrong, to correct the error. And this will be a big tell. It'll be a big moment because I think for a lot of people, they're really going to be holding out, hoping, okay, now's the chance for them to get this right. Are they going to get it right? I think a lot of people are going to be awoken to the reality that are going to be awakened. That's probably the proper term there. They're going to be awakened to the reality that their pastors are not fighters, that they are moral cowards. So we're going to see. There's going to be a lot of fallout. I hope that these people go and find Bible churches, because here's how you know that a church is not afraid of offending, is if they teach the Bible. All right? If they open up the scriptures and they teach verse by verse. In our study in Hosea, we've been going verse by verse on Sunday mornings, presenting it from a dispensational, contextual, rightly dividing position. That would offend many people. I have said a number of times in this series that the bride of Christ, God's wife, it ain't us. It's not us. It's not the church. You have one passage in Ephesians chapter 5. One passage that you get to extrapolate from it, stretch it to make your case. The rest of the time, it is abundantly clear that Israel, and specifically the city of Jerusalem, is the Lamb's wife. So we say offensive things every Sunday. It's offensive to somebody. It makes somebody mad. That's evident on my YouTube channel, right? When somebody happens to stumble across my sermons and I make them mad when I say something like, replacement theology is incorrect, or I make a statement that the King James Bible is the best English translation. We say offensive things all the time. It's the churches that never say anything offensive that is the big red flag that tells you they're not going to get involved in this fight. They are going to plug their ears, they're going to close their eyes, la 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 la, can't hear you, we're going to ignore it, we're not going to address it, because they never address anything. They never address doctrine for the sake of offending people. They never give a clear presentation of any important theological matter. At best, they'll affirm that Jesus was God and that He rose again from the dead. Excellent, thank you very much, good job. That in no way distinguishes you from anybody. Not really. Not really, because a Mormon would say the same thing. If a preacher gets up there and preaches a sermon that a Mormon would nod their head along to and say, yes, absolutely, you're doing it wrong. What is a thing that Life Church really says? I'll just name names. I don't care. What is anything that Life Church would really say that a Mormon just couldn't quite go along with? I've tried to listen to their sermons before, and it is just painful. And you listen, and are they getting any better about giving a gospel presentation? Anybody watched a Life Church sermon lately? Because all I know, they're still talking about just having a relationship with Jesus. You are not saved by having a relationship with Jesus. So, if the vast majority of people who even have some affiliation with Christianity are able to just nod along and amen whatever you're saying, yeah, you're not taking any hard position. And yet you want to act like you're doing something. You want to act like you're being bold. That's just not it. So I have a lot of hope. I may sound negative and I may be very critical, which I am. Paul was very critical at times. Christ was critical at times when you look at his handling of the Pharisees, the Sadducees, those groups. Even Capernaum, the common people he ministered to when they rejected him. It'll be more tolerable in the day of Sodom and Gomorrah than it is for thee. I'm very optimistic because what I'm trying to tell you is these people are going to be driven away from the empty, cowardly, doctrinally atrophied churches. Maybe not even doctrinally atrophied, because in order to have atrophy, you must have something. Just completely doctrinally absent churches, and they're going to look for churches that are willing to take a stand, willing to fight, and you know what? That's just going to happen to land you in a church that teaches the Bible. Now, the reality is not all of them are going to be rightly dividing churches, because the truth is it's easier to find an honest politician than it is to find a rightly dividing church. Just about, nearly. I don't know. It might be easier to find a rightly dividing church than an honest politician. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. Anyways. So, it's hard to find a right dividing church, but at the very least, you know what? If it's in the vein of some John MacArthur church, by no means am I a Calvinist, but at least they're trying to do Bible study. I think they're approaching it the wrong way, but at least they're trying. And that's going to be more substantive than where they were before, as far as they'll gain some Bible knowledge, no doubt about it. So in light of all the bad things, as dark as it looks, I think there is a reason to be optimistic. Okay, I really am. And I hope that you... I'm curious to ask if you think... if you think that's the case, your sense of things. So that's my opening discourse here. I'm going to read some of your comments, and then we're going to get into some news. That's kind of the main thing I've got going on. We're going to have to talk about Pam Bondi, and then we're also going to talk about a silly thing that the Memphis mayor said. All right, so I've got some news for you, but I'm trying to be really on almost a day-by-day basis reflecting on, considering where we are right now, being very reflective, okay, being very reflective on the state of things. And I do think that the second Sunday after Charlie Kirk's assassination will be very, very telling, okay? I think it'll be very, very telling as to who's going to correct course. Because there's a lot of preachers in this world, folks, they will never admit they're wrong. The one thing that you have to give credence to about a right divider, just about, because very few are naturally rightly dividing the Bible, okay? You're just not born into it. There came a point when they admitted they were wrong, all right? And then that can be said for some others. There's some people who are not naturally born into Reformed theology, but then they hear about it, they come into it, and they have at least gone through the process of being persuaded that their position was incorrect. Okay, so yeah, find somebody who can grow, admit when they're wrong. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised. Their preacher that didn't say anything about Charlie on Sunday and has never shown any signs of being a fighter, never shown any inkling at all of taking a stand, he ain't going to do it next Sunday either, because it's not in him. He ain't got what it takes. He's not cut from that cloth. He never was. So if you think the exodus from this past Sunday is going to be big, the second Sunday may be even bigger, because that may be the breaking point. After that, people probably don't know anything about it. So Paul says, well, the company I work for, pretty liberal, just hired a new guy. I met him yesterday. Come find out he's turning out to be a right divider and KJV reader. God is awesome how he works. Man, that is really, really cool. I'm excited to hear that. He's out of Florida and attends Beacon Baptist Church in Jupiter, Florida, pastored by Jim Blaylock. I don't know anything about them, but there are people out there. I am discovering. I do think that the right division doctrine is getting out. People are hearing about it. I think that they are finding it to be compelling. Like I was telling a young man the other day, and that young man knows who he is. Right division, while I think you cannot just say it never was a historical position, because the truth is we don't really know what was historical, because the Catholic Church killed so many who disagreed. If you're not a Catholic today, folks, let's just accept the reality. If you are not a Catholic, if they got their hands on you, you would have been killed for heresy. All right? There was a time when that's what the Catholic Church was doing. So, the appeal to history, well, historically we haven't had this. Okay, fine, maybe. I don't know. But I think that the way to get the Reformed, all right, how you get them to at least be somewhat open to considering the possibility is just presenting it as, hey, this is just the next step in Reformation. Getting furthermore removed from the bad theology of Catholicism and getting back to the Bible itself. I think that's the route. So I'm excited. That's encouraging to hear. Very good. Ken says, now Mark will scold me for being insensitive. I don't quite know what that context is about being insensitive. But sure, you're being insensitive, Ken. I really don't know. Brother Pugs mentions I've combed my hair. Well, I mean, I have hair, so I guess I should comb it, right? It's just getting longer. I need my wife to give me another trim. Oh, maybe that's why I was taking too long, and so y'all were being impatient with me. That may be it. You were waiting for me to finally get here. Let's see here. Brandon, are you out there recruiting in the junior high and high schools? He's going to be speaking at See at the Pole. See at the Pole, it's an ecumenical event. But you would be silly to not take advantage of See You at the Pole. If you can get some kids to come over to a Right Dividing Church, might as well. So yeah, Brandon's gonna be running the show over there. I got him a gig, I told him. Wesley says, I was driving yesterday and unable to answer your question. To attempt to steel man reform soteriology to the best of my ability, yes, God sovereignly ordains faith by grace. It is not a work of man, lest any man should boast, but God sovereignly chooses us as he sees fit. The potter can do as he pleases with the clay. Yeah, that would be the steel man, the strong argument for the reform view, that it's God ordains faith by grace. So grace is the gift given to man, to whom God chooses, and then when that man receives the grace of God, he is then able to have faith. Faith is, they would even argue from Ephesians 2:8 that faith is a gift, even though I think that is not the proper analysis of the Greek grammar there, but that's the approach. Yeah, we were, for those who didn't know, we were talking about soteriology last night. There was a question from Wesley there. Vina's with us. Vina, Vinay. I don't know how to pronounce it. If you could give me like a very phonetic pronunciation of that so I get it right, but Vina is with us from Australia, West Australia to be exact. Hello, Santos. Great to have you with us. Appreciate you. Robert says, I live pretty near Memphis. Anyone who says that they have crime under control is in denial. Yeah, I've been through Memphis one time on the way to a rifle class, and I stopped at the Bass Pro Shops, but we did not stay longer than that. Okay. So, Vina. Vina. I should have thought of that. Vina. Kevin Spicer, my first time tuning in live. Kevin, great to have you. You said that you've watched me before. This is your first time tuning in live. Really appreciate you. If you have any questions today, I'll be more than happy to get to them. I think we're going to have time because I feel like this is a week in which there may be a number of questions. You may have a number of thoughts concerning whether it's Charlie, how churches have responded. Once again, I'm still very much, I'm not surprised, but I'm nonetheless enraged all the same, because I saw so many preachers speaking out during the BLM riots in which the cities burned in 2020 and marching with the left-wing ideology, and yet now they have a brother in Christ who has been killed simply for defending traditional marriage, simply for defending the life of the unborn, simply for defending God making man in his image, male and female, created he them, and they ain't said anything about him specifically. Maybe the weakest statements on unity or violence or hatred, but you said George Floyd by name. You posted a black square. We saw all that. So that's one reason why I don't have the full, here's point one, here's point two, here's what we're talking about today, because I want to leave the floor open, because I think it's just as important that you get to tell me your thoughts and how you think things are right now, because I'm not in West Australia. I'm not out on the East Coast. I'm not on the West Coast. I'm not in the Midwest. I don't really know what the sentiments are like there. All I can speak for is what is here. And what I'm seeing here is there are a number of people who are realizing, hey, our churches aren't doing anything. And they've realized now that their churches haven't done anything for quite some time. This was just the moment that the blindfold was taken off, I think. So that being said, let's go ahead and talk about a little bit of news, some recent events that have taken place. Can we all please agree that Pam Bondi is the worst hire of the Trump administration? All right, I don't think it's any mystery or secret that I personally did not like her choice as him choosing her as Attorney General. Her stance on gun rights has been incredibly weak, but also how she's handled other things. The Epstein debacle. I think so much of this and I know there's a lot of fuel to the fire, claiming Trump did this, Trump did that, whatever. But I think the reality is, I think so much of it is her mishandling. She pretended or presented it as if she had all of this bombshell information that was going to completely transform everything. And then it comes out and it's a big nothing, right? So today's problem with Pam Bondi, she gave an address in a video, and you have her quote right there. There's free speech, and then there's hate speech, and there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society. This is the Babylon Bee is so good about capturing a lot of this. It goes against everything that Charlie said, because Charlie's point was, let's discuss this. All right. Hate speech is a term the left uses, all right, to try to silence conservatives. You say that a man can't become a woman, that's hate speech. So therefore you can't say that. Why is she using the same language, the same terminology as the left? The article from the Daily Wire says Attorney General Pam Bondi received swift backlash from conservatives, good, after she threatened to prosecute Americans for using hate speech. The Attorney General endorsed hate speech prosecutions during an appearance on the Katie Miller podcast, which is hosted by the wife of White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. Bondi said that targeting purveyors of hate speech has become more important in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination. She said, there's free speech and then there's hate speech, and there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie in our society. Once again, I'm repeating that quote. She said, we will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech. That is absolutely not what we are holding to. That's not what we want to see happen, because hate speech isn't real. That's my position. I think Charlie Kirk would affirm, would agree. Hate speech is not a real thing, because when you tie it to the idea of hate, what do you think? You think hate crime, right? And so therefore, clearly this is more heinous. This is unacceptable speech. Hate speech is just a term for something that I don't like. Now, speech that is a call to violence. All right. If someone hypothetically said, hey, someone needs to go murder Charlie Kirk, that is not protected speech, because that is a call to engage in unlawful, illegal violence. Okay? We all understand that. That's a threat. All right? If there is a man who shows signs of being able to pose a threat, okay, and he yells threats at you, you are in your rights to protect yourself, because he is showing the capacity and he has communicated the intent to harm you. These are not complicated things in a court of law, right? We see things like this all the time, justified use of force. If the guy's holding a 2x4 and he is way across the way and he calls me a name, that's one thing. If he's holding the 2x4 and he's maybe coming closer, or he is handing the 2x4 over to someone and he says, hey, you take this 2x4 and you go hit that guy, that is a threat, and that is speech that is condoning and attributing to violence. These are very simple concepts. We know what they are. For Pam Bondi to come out and say this big rant about hate speech, she's just repeating what the left has been doing all this time in an effort to silence conservatives. The answer is not to be like the left. Charlie was not like the left, because he stood for open debate and open discussion. So she is absolutely one of the worst. She is the worst hire of the Trump administration, bar none. Okay, she's the worst. You have a right to voice your opinion about Charlie Kirk. All right? At the same time, your employer should also have the right to fire you. See, that's the difference between freedom of speech all right? Freedom of speech doesn't mean that you are immune from consequences as far as somebody choosing whether or not to hire you or fire you. If there was somebody, for example, who worked for a company and this company, I don't know, was a pro-gun or something, just using it, or this was a gun company, right? They manufactured firearms, and you've got an employee, and all they do all day long is talk about, you know, oh, guns are evil, we should ban them. You should not expect to be working at the company very long, because the company has the right to hire who they will, because they have a right. The company itself, the owner of the company, has a right to determine who works for him and who doesn't. So one of the problems with unions, because it creates this thing where the owner, the company, doesn't have the right to manage things as they see fit. Your speech is still protected. You are not going to go to prison for articulating your speech. But there can be consequences. That's the difference. That's the distinction. That's how you actually handle that. You have the right to say a lot of very evil and vile things. But you're not going to be arrested. You're not going to be sent to prison for it. At the same time, don't be surprised if you say wicked and vile things all the time, that there's not some consequences as far as who wants to do business with you, as far as maybe how stable your job situation is. So, yeah, very, very unimpressed with Pam Bondi and her handling of that. We're not advocating for censorship of so-called hate speech. What we would like is the call to violence to stop, because that isn't legal. That isn't inciting of violence, and you know what that speech is when you hear it. Okay? Saying that Trump is a terrible president, or you could even use worse things, that's protected speech. It's not hate speech, because it doesn't exist. Openly calling for someone to assassinate Donald Trump, that is not okay. That is a call to violence. That's how the First Amendment works. So Pam Bondi completely swing and a miss there in her articulation of that. I'm glad Mary notes that President Trump said hate speech is free speech. I'm glad that he clarified that. Ken said, who sets the parameters to determine hate? Exactly. That's a big problem too, because who decides? Because the left would say that if I said a man is a woman, the left says a man is a woman. If I said a man cannot be a woman, well then that's hate speech. Or if I say a baby in the womb is a person, and if you abort that baby, then you're committing murder, they would call that hate speech as well. But I'm glad to see that Trump is clarifying his position there. Robert says, I grew up with the Huntley-Brinkley report. Yes, I'm that old. Well, I haven't even heard of that, so I'm just going to have to take your word for it. I remember David Brinkley defending the right of neo-Nazis to sing racist songs in public. He said, if we silence them, later on they will silence the rest of us. Yeah, that's the reality. And then if their speech, ventures into the call to actually assault somebody, the call to kill someone, we call those threats, and that falls into a different category. So there is no need for a new law or new policy concerning speech. And Pam Bondi was acting as if there was a call to enact some kind of new policy for for speech. It's already taken care of. We've already addressed it, okay? The Constitution already has addressed it. The courts have already addressed it. We know how to handle speech and the proper way to do so. Jay's exactly right. Speech can be hateful, but should be protected. Toby says, wow, Bob, I remember Walter Cronkite and Paul Harvey. I've heard of Paul Harvey and Cronkite. Brother Pug says, I saw a report recently that said approximately 30% of Gen Z identified as LGBTQ XYZ. I mean, wow. Well, yeah. And is that nature? Is it really true that throughout all of human history, 30% of people have been, I'm going to say, moral deviants? No. Not in that aspect, not in that, the sexual aspect, the gender aspect. This is clearly something manufactured by modern progressive ideology. Look at all of these celebrities and how many of them have kids who are on that spectrum. Robert says, I agree with you, Pastor Mark. Free speech always. But people are going to vote with their pocketbooks. Just ask the Dixie Chicks. Yeah, the Dixie Chicks ruined their career when they spoke out against George Bush. You're a country music group. Who do you think your primary audience is? The Dixie Chicks had a right to give their complaints, their grievances about George Bush, but don't be surprised when people don't want to buy from you anymore when you make that statement. Jerry makes a good observation there. I would question that stat. You should question every stat, whether you like it or not. Whether it's a stat that makes you feel good or a stat that makes you feel bad. But my point is, I think we would all agree. Hey Jerry, how many people did you know of back when you were a young man that identified as transgender, right? Probably none, it wasn't a thing. So we can agree at the very least that this is a thing that has happened in modern times. Whether or not that statistic is exactly right is another matter. Hey, Santos says Brazil owes a lot of respect and gratitude to Charlie Kirk because he was the first to give space on his show to a Brazilian journalist who lives in Florida and has been denouncing the tyranny that has been installed here since 2022. And it was thanks to him that Trump is intervening harshly. If nothing like this appears there for your brothers and sisters. I was trying to make sure I followed the end of that there. Yeah, Charlie, and that was one of the things, he really started to expand beyond just America. He was talking about make England great again, things like that. He went to South Korea, he did work for Brazil. And so, he did a lot of great work for a number of people. Ken says, I never trusted Cronkite back when I was in very early years. I had good instincts. Yeah, wasn't he pretty liberal, Cronkite was. Of course, nowadays, I guess compared to modern liberalism, he would have been on the right, probably. Kevin says, John MacArthur used to say that hate speech is condoning sin. That hate speech is condoning sin. Let me break down that statement so I make sure I understand. Hate speech, which is hard to define, but he would say hate speech is condoning sin. So if you're condoning sin, commending it, supporting it, that is hate speech. I probably get where he's coming from there, what he's saying. He's probably doing, a theological play on terms there. I think I'm following now. Brother Pug says, I'm speaking of number that's approximately 17 million of one generation. I don't know, California does seem pretty weird. New York seems pretty weird. It may not be as far off as we might think. Brother Pugs is convinced. He would say that I don't question it at all. I live in a city where it is prevalent. It's very possible. Michaela says, I work in a home crisis counseling in Louisville, and the majority of my families have experienced gun violence. It's daily in Louisville. Yeah. And I think we're going to get there. We're going to get there. As a matter of fact, let's just go ahead and go to this. So the next article that I was going to talk about today, this is from Breitbart. Democrat Tennessee mayor, constitutional carry made crime rise, but we're making great strides. This is the mayor of Memphis. So he makes a statement here. Constitutional carry made crime rise. What is constitutional carry? Constitutional carry says that you have the right to carry a gun. If you are 21 years of age, is the age they put at it, you're not a felon or anything like that, you're allowed to carry a gun, concealed or even on your, visibly if you want. It depends on where you are. Some stores may have a policy. They don't want you to carry openly. Anyways. On Tuesday's edition of NBC's Meet the Press Now, Shelby County Mayor Lee Harris blamed constitutional carry for many guns ending up in many, many places where they are stolen out of cars and end up in the criminal stream. And we've seen our crime statistics go up dramatically as a result of those kinds of laws being passed out of Nashville. But also stated that we are making great strides here on crime. First of all, question the stats. Stats can be doctored very easily. Just as we talked about the claims of right-wing political violence, claiming that Josh Shapiro's arson attack was from the right. It absolutely was not. Even the one like Melissa Hortman, that one even has challenges, especially considering, hey, the only kind of government work he did was under Democrat groups, Democrat governance. Regardless, I have the solution, for the mayor here. The mayor, is very concerned about constitutional carry because people are going to have guns in their cars and, they're going to be carrying guns and things like that. And so, guns are getting stolen out of vehicles and things, and so those guns are being used in crimes. Here's the idea. You know what you should do? You should make it illegal to steal the guns. Don't you think that, is that the answer, right? Just make it illegal. If you make it illegal, then the crime will stop. Just say, guys, you can't be stealing guns out of people's vehicles. They're problem solved, right? First of all, I'm being a little bit sarcastic. Second of all, I have a hard time believing that Tennesseans were not carrying guns in their vehicles before constitutional carry. Something tells me they were probably doing it beforehand. Because Tennessee also had handgun laws for one. Also, probably people were just carrying guns in their vehicles. That's my suspicion. Now, he may be able to show some statistics. Well, hey, look, when they passed constitutional carry, look at how crime just shot up, skyrocketed. The more people that have guns, the more crime goes up. I tell you what. Correlation is not causation. Sometimes it can be causation, but that doesn't mean it is. Correlation and causation are not the same thing. You have to determine, is that really the cause? Okay? Don't just correlate something and then assume that's the cause. So I don't know what statistics he has here that Breitbart's reporting, but that's what he claims. He's blaming this on constitutional carry. Memphis is a Democrat-run city. Memphis has a lot of crime. Memphis probably needs to keep these people behind bars. That's what I would say. This goes back to the classic problem. It's the guns, it's the guns, it's the guns, it's the guns. It ain't the guns. It ain't the guns. Because these people would kill you with a knife. They would rob you with a hammer. If all the guns were banned today, you know what would happen? Go ask Great Britain what would happen. People would start stabbing each other. Because criminals are going to do criminal things. You know what you do? If a person commits a violent crime with a gun, or any kind of violent crime, he goes to prison until he's probably a very, very old man. Now, some would maybe go so extreme to say, you know what? He had the intention of taking life. Let's go ahead and be a little bit looser on, our use of capital punishment. Maybe some people they'd go very extreme, right? I just say, put him away for a very long time, very, very long time. But you know what we do? He used assault with a deadly weapon, but there's systematic racism or what have you for whatever reason. Let's let him out. Let's let him out on cheap bail after, or let's let him out on good behavior after a couple years, and they go right back to doing it again. I guarantee you your problem is you are not keeping criminals in prison. And you're not arresting people and putting them behind bars. All right? That is the issue. Guarantee you that is the case. Otherwise, just pass the law to make it illegal to steal guns, right? Because if that's it, if all you're missing is a law, then surely, right, bad people are going to stop doing bad things because, hey, buddy, I really wanted to go, knock off this liquor store over here. I need a gun, but they just passed a law. I can't steal the gun. I just can't do it, so I guess I won't do anything bad now. What kind of fantasy la land are you living in? There's a reason why they're criminals. They don't care about the laws. And I guarantee you they were getting guns beforehand. You know why? They were breaking into stores and getting them. Or they're buying them from somebody else. They're stealing them out of people's vehicles anyways, long before constitutional carry was a thing. Did you think that people weren't carrying guns in their vehicles before constitutional carry? So what do you want? What do you want, Democrat Mayor? Do you want to make it illegal to have guns in your vehicles? Is that what you're saying? What is your solution here? What are you trying to propose? You know what I think? I think you need to, remember when the Scorpion crew, the Scorpion squad back in the day, some of it was BLM, and the media tried to make it a really big thing. That was in Memphis, I'm almost certain. Remember the Scorpion crew, the Scorpion squad? Anybody here watching right now? It was this big whole thing, another act of systematic racism, and oh, whoops, they were all black police officers. So they didn't get to use their racism bit, even though they still tried to do it a little bit. And then what did Memphis do? They shut it down. Shut it down. You have hand-tied. You have defanged your police officers because you have made them the villains. Minneapolis has done it. Memphis has done it. Other places have done it. That's your problem. Okay? That's your problem. You're sitting around all day, eating ice cream, getting fat, and then you're blaming the spoons. It ain't the spoons that's the problem. If I didn't have those spoons, it wouldn't be near as easy for that ice cream to get in my mouth. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, that's the problem. Get rid of the spoons. These are silly things. They just cycle making silly arguments, that's all. I'm glad that Brother Pugs has a good church there. Michaela maybe is going to find out about that as well. Brandon says constitutional carry doesn't really have anything to do with keeping it in your car. Yeah, exactly. That's another good point. Because you can keep a gun in your car anyways. Even in New York, if you keep it locked up, you're allowed to have it. It's got to be in a lock, but still all the same. So, silly ideas. We got to confront the silly ideas. You know what I think a silly idea is? Not going to church on Sunday and not having every single man be armed. I think that's a silly thing. So you should protect innocent life. And so these are my thoughts on a Wednesday. Tonight we're going to be studying Abraham, finding the biblical truth. I hope that you join us if you want to come to Blue. We also have Brandon, who is our excellent youth director. He'll be teaching the kids as well. So here's studying Abraham, finding the biblical truth. And we'll be going live tonight at 6:30. I believe that's all I've got for you today. I hope that you go and have a great rest of your day. Stand for truth. Hold men to a higher standard. Hold preachers to a higher standard to teach the Bible. And hey, remember, there have been many who have given their lives for the sake of the faith. We go back and we think of those of the Apostle Paul and others. And so let's make their sacrifice worth something. All right. So with that, everybody, I really do appreciate each and every one of you. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. We'll see you tonight for Bible study.